You're listening to a Galactic Network podcast. For more, go to gncast.com.
We're the ElseNerds.
Hello and welcome to the ElseNerds, a production of Galactic Netcast. I'm Gregor Sprague, and joining me is Corey Scott. Just a forewarning, we will swear on the show, we will spoil things, so there is the warnings, and also if you want to find out more about us, about show notes, subscription links, all that stuff, you can go to ElseNerds.com or gncast.com for everything that our network has to offer you. Corey, how you doing?
I'm fine. How are you doing, Gregor?
I'm doing pretty good. It sounds like I think I just said this stuff not 10 minutes ago, but whatever. Let's do it again. It's Groundhog's Day, folks. Not really, but more in the movie sense.
ElseNerds show so nice. We tried it twice.
Yes.
So far.
So far. But yeah, so I'm doing pretty good. Yesterday was rough at work. Long story short, I don't know what it was. If it was because Target is doing the big promotion with $300 for iPhone for Target gift cards. But I had seen in the group me for my district that Verizon was having problems activating phones at the end. AT&T, which I was dealing with, was having problems. But the thing that ticked me off is, and I don't know if you've ever done a phone upgrade through Target to get a gift card or whatever, but you don't get the gift card until the end. You go through, you sign all the stuff to make for being an authorized user and all that, or if you're adding a line or upgrading whatever and all that stuff. Then you do the payment of the taxes for the full retail of the phone, and if you put any money down, you do that and then go through. The gentleman did that, and then AT&T tried to turn on saying he needed to pay more. And I'm like, no, fuck no. He already put down his payment. It's because you guys looked up the account again and pinged his credit up for a third fucking time because he already had to stop and go get more money once and had to redo all the information. And so, yeah, no. Get this working.
I have bought a house. I have bought or leased multiple cars. Getting a cell phone seems to be at almost the same kind of level as either of those things, which is just insanity to me. We are in an era of smartphones, so I can't understand why the process is so fucking stupid. But it doesn't matter which store I've been to, who's helped me, and certainly great people have given me excellent service, except for all the fucking process to do it. So I'm just super grateful these days that my phone comes from my job.
Yeah.
And I don't have to deal with any of that shit.
And a lot of it, I think part of it is because with me working at Target, it's through another system. So it's
I've gone into the Verizon stores and had to deal with this. I've gone in recently. Aaron upgraded her phone at Sprint, and it was over an hour, almost, I think 2 hours of getting everything done. And I'm like, dude, we know what phone we want. But it's such a weird system. And some of it is still that a lot of these stores have slow or begrudgingly awful internet. The systems that they're on are terrible. The interaction between them and the main offices and everything else that has to go through it, the amount of paperwork that you still have to physically sign, it's ridiculous. It is so strange for the fact that I know phones are actually expensive. And so it is a contract that you're signing to carry this $1,000 device around with you. And I'm sure that there's a lot of government regulations and stuff that come in with it. But I see things like buy your phone directly from Google. and then just take it and pop your SIM in or whatever. And that seems so much more compelling to me than dealing with this other stuff. But I get it, and I think that's not just those. I see it with anything with delivery or overtime I have. When I worked in retail, I see it in a lot of stuff. And I just, as a person who works IT, and I go around and I see systems that are, to me, functionally broken, and I think, how do we fix that? How do we make that better? It just surprises me how little emphasis there's been on that, especially when it would increase sales. It would increase customer satisfaction. The two biggest things that a business wants, but they're just like, well, but what are you gonna do? Go pay as you go with Boost Mobile or something? Nah, you're stuck with us.
No, and because on the retail side of things, I mean, I went from last year. I worked at Dollar General. I am so glad I got the fuck out of that place. Sorry, but I had to say it. One, because of, some of the people, but that's besides the point. The main one was because of the computers. Like they're still running, like, I think it was like MS-DOS or something on there. Like,
oh yeah. When I started at an electronics retailer, years ago, it was like, okay, now you're going to do all this stuff in green screen. And I'm like, there's a green you guys are still working with what is monochrome technology. So that was the background. And then even when we went over to Windows systems, it was still a back and forth. But the funny thing is, and I see this a lot in IT, is that people are so used to a system working the way that it does, and they're really good at it, that they don't want to transfer to the new system that may in many ways be better. It's like, but I can find my way around here. I can do this, so don't retrain me on this other thing. And so it causes the technology to stagnate because of people being resistant to change. On the other hand, there's a lot of things that when they do upgrade to new systems, they're essentially broken from the get-go. Yeah. And it's like, well, fuck, if I could get back to my green screen, I would be able to make all this shit work. I can sing on that son of a bitch.
And this is the problem I had with working at both Dollar General and at Target for the phones, because, with the exception of this week, I'm usually there as electronics aid. That's not technically my job, but that's, the other part. And it's like, so, so I can help them so they can continue to do, zoning or whatever needs to be done over there. So I'm ringing up a lot of stuff that I don't get money for. And so what that ends up, that has been a big complaint, is the chip cards, and I'm like, and the, just the fact that, for Dollar General, they upgraded at the store I was at, they upgraded the credit card machine part, but not the computers themselves. And I'm like, and people will complain. I'm like, I'm sorry. I'm like, I'm telling them why this has to be the way it is, because chip and pin is so much more secure than the magnetic stripe on the card. And actually, why I'm glad now that Target doesn't, with their red cards, they don't do the stripe. It's just the chip and stuff on there. And I'm like, you want to see a great example of what chip and pin is supposed to do? Be like, go down to Walgreens down the road here. That, like, I went there with my pastor, and he literally, and I'm like, wait, that's how that's supposed to be? Why don't all machines have this? They've also got brand new machines, like they're running Windows 7 at least, not Windows XP Professional or whatever Target's running right now.
Well, so people who didn't realize that ElseNerds is a retail podcast, welcome to the show. We're going to fall into the gap in just a minute, and then we will take you to Brookstone, and you can kiss it and see if you get lucky, like it's St. Patrick's Day.
Corey, let's be honest. Neither of us shop at the Gap.
No, I don't know that I fit anything in the Gap, and I don't enjoy khakis. I know they're wag your noodle pants, but my noodle likes something a little bit more denim-y. Yes. I like Levi's, which are America's napkin. So yeah, let's just move along to some else news, okay?
Yeah, exactly. And the first bit of news comes to us from bleedingcool.com, and this is Roddenberry Entertainment unveiled a new Geek-Inspired anime series at WonderCon. This is Rod Roddenberry, the son of Star Trek creator Gene Roddenberry, and he's been keeping himself busy, over the past few years, and he's executive producing the next Star Trek TV show, Star Trek Discovery, which will get released sometime in the future.
Do we technically call these things TV shows anymore, by the way, when they're not made specifically to be watched on a television? I mean, yes, obviously you can Roku that shit, you can Apple TV it, but it's not coming through broadcast television anymore. I wonder if it's going to be like netcasts versus podcasts. If someone down the line is going to say, well, do we call it that anymore, or is it something else? Like someone's going to try to distinguish it and come up with their own genre term and make the change. And one, I wonder if it'll stick. It's like we still say taping things when we're using a DVR.
Yeah.
It's like the icons that were on the iPhones a few years ago that were still like, and this phone looks like an old-fashioned phone with a little fucking cord attached to it and shit. And here's your tape recorder and all these things that don't really exist and that kids today don't even understand what the references are to. I think about that sometimes. I also think about the fact that this show, as we're talking about it from Rod Roddenberry, son of Gene Roddenberry, is called Rod and Barry, which sounds great if you're like, oh, I've got this name and I can make it work for these two characters. But I'll tell you what, man, I hear Roddenberry and I think of something completely different.
A little bit of bait and tackle.
Well, I mean, some tackle, just the one. So it's kind of like Matt from Podcast of Terror. But it's all right. So, but to get back to the story, this is a series that began as a webcomic, ran from 2008 to 2013. Features two purple aliens named Rod and Barry. They've been sent to observe Earth and its culture and report back to their homeworld prior to Earth's annihilation. They discover television, become big television watchers. I have no way of relating to that at all. Just giant fanboys that watch series like Game of Thrones, Battlestar Galactica, Lost. If it ends up with them getting a podcast, we should just fucking shift and let them take over.
Yeah. That's where you just see us go, well, this is it. This is the end. And then 10 years later, we'll come on and do a reunion thing.
I, for one, welcome our new purple alien overlords.
Yeah. So the first thing that came to my mind when when looking through this article was, this is like an updated Beavis and Butthead. Like, I mean, because if you look at the very basic premise, or when I hear Beavis and Butthead, besides the, Great Cornholio and all that stuff, it was always the thing that I liked the most was them doing talking over the music videos. Like they're watching MTV and, they're giving their, like riff tracks on it.
The stuff that made it almost impossible to put Beavis and Butthead on VHS and DVD later on was because of all that video stuff. But yeah, that's absolutely it. It's two characters that are sitting there doing critiques of television while sitting on a couch. So that is very Beavis and Butthead-esque.
And so here's the some of the cool things. So so it is the comic that's coming over, but it will star the voice actor Greg Sipes, who does on, if it's the same one I'm thinking of, he does Beast Boy in Teen Titans and Teen Titans Go. He's done he did Iron Fist on Ultimate Spider-Man. And he'll also be serving as a producer on the project. And and it mentions it in there. And the additional cast will include Aaron Doe, Brittany Ferlin, Ben Storm, and Rod Roddenberry himself, Rod Roddenberry, Trevor Roth, and Scott Paxkoff will be acting as executive producers. This is exciting for me because like you said all the different things, but this is stuff that I think can be really fun, really cool to watch.
And also for people who might be going to WonderCon at the end of the month, this will be a panel presenting the shorts, hosted by Claire Kramer, famous for being in Buffy the Vampire Slayer, among other things. And you will be able to get to meet some of the people that are involved with the show and maybe see a preview of it.
Yeah. So our next story is, and I realize I'm on the wrong team in this with my wardrobe today, but Chris Evans is open playing Captain America after Avengers 4. So yeah, last week he told Esquire that he's probably done playing the character after he had fulfilled his contract. And then there's a quote, settling in on the couch, he groans. Evans explains that he's hurting all over because he just started his workout routine the day before to get in shape for the next 2 Captain America films. The movies will be shot back to back beginning in April. After that, no more red, white, and blue costume for the 35-year-old. He will have fulfilled his contract. And then there later goes on to be, he's speaking with Christina Radish, on a press day for his new film Gifted, and he sounded, quite a bit different. Where she asks, "Are you going to be done? Are you really going to be done playing Captain America after the next 2 Avengers movies?" And he says, "It's not really up to me. My contract is up. I'm not going to sit here and say no more. I think Hugh Jackman has made 47 Wolverine movies, and they somehow keep getting better. It's a character I love. It's a factory that really knows what they're doing. The system is sound over there. They make great movies, and if they're kicking out quality, if they weren't kicking out quality, I'd have a different opinion. But everything Marvel does seems to be cinema gold. And like I said, I love the character. The only reason it would end is because my contract is up after Avengers 4. My contract is done. Talk to Marvel if we engage further. I'd be open to it. I love the character. It's almost like high school. You certainly always look to senior year, and then all of a sudden senior year happens, and you're like, I don't know if I'm really going to go. It's tough thinking about not playing the guy. So it sounds like
I remember Chris Evans said something early in the films, like maybe it was after the first Avengers, where he was like, "Yeah, I'm only gonna play this so long, and I'm looking to get into directing and stuff." But then about the time that Winter Soldier happened, I think he saw that they weren't always going to be just straight up superhero movies, and that there was some more depth to them, some more story opportunities, and he felt a little bit more attracted to the role at that point. Now, Chris has been acting a long time and has done a huge variety of different things. He's got a lot of comedy chops. People don't realize that now when they see him playing Cap, who's very stoic, but he's done really funny stuff. I would put him at a level of Ryan Reynolds of how much comedy he can. He's just naturally funny. And it seems like, there's the pay factor to think about of like, well, Marvel's going to keep making billion-dollar films, and I like my big fucking movie checks. But that's not always necessary to somebody who's either considered themselves an artist, or realistically, the amount of stress it puts in your body to try to stay in this keen cut shape for these films. Now, he's lucky that he's younger than some of the other actors in these roles. I mean, Robert Downey Jr. looks amazing. He's older than I am. It's incredible that he's held together in the way that he is, which is like, I've never looked like that. Hugh Jackman, same thing, is probably around my age or so, and is cut as shit, but that does take a toll. Even if it's like, I only do it when I'm getting ready for the role again, it's like, that's some hard shit to put yourself through. And they're strenuous, physically active films. So I could see saying, it's tough for me to always come back to this, but I could also see why it would be hard for him to leave, because they're good movies and they're successful movies, and a lot of actors dream of hitting this level of success.
And I will also say this: he doesn't. There is a future if you go with the Marvel canon. There is a future with him not having to be buff, macho Captain America. There have been, like, the article points out, you know, Sebastian Stan's character Bucky Barnes and Anthony Mackie's character Sam Wilson have both went on to become Captain America themselves. You know, Sam Wilson's is currently the Captain America, although it looks like that might be going away. And also, on a side note, Hugh Jackman is 48, Robert Downey Jr. is 51. But so, I mean, there are roles that he could be playing as, you know, going on down the road as a director of S.H.I.E.L.D., as, you know, a commander in S.H.I.E.L.D. or something like that.
Which is already a part that Samuel L. Jackson is in these films. And Samuel L. Jackson has let slip, like, there may be stuff going on with the Nick Fury character coming back and possibly having something to do with the Red Skull. Although it's something that he said casually that may or may not actually have any bearing, and it's just he was talking casually about, like, well, there's still stuff out there for Nick to be fighting and figuring out. So that, don't take that at 100%. The thing about it is that as much as I love Anthony Mackie, and as much as I've enjoyed Sebastian Stan in the films, Cap in the movies is my guy. He has become to me what Christopher Reeve was to me growing up, as like, I would see Christopher Reeve and that's Superman to me. And certainly when I saw films where Christopher Reeve was not playing Superman, it was a little confusing at first. Like when he was in A Love Story Going Through Time, or when he was gay and kissing Michael Caine in Death Trap. I'm like, whoa, that's what? All right, you know, cool. But he was still, like, when I saw him as Superman, I totally bought in to Superman in that moment. And that made me a Superman fan. And I don't think in a way that the comics ever could have. And same thing with Chris Evans's Cap, is like, I saw Chris Evans's Cap. Now, it's not just him. It's the writing of the films. It's the direction of the films. It's all the whole cast around him. But I completely bought into it, and I felt like this is the guy that I want to watch do this forever. And in both cases of Winter Soldier and Falcon, I like those actors as those characters. I'm not a big fan of, like, I get the legacy thing, and I love the legacy thing in comics because comics have so much more story to fill over years and years and decades and stuff. I don't necessarily need to see that happen in the movies. I would like to see Anthony Mackie just continue making Falcon badass in the movies. I would like to see Sebastian Stan continue to make Bucky cool as shit in the films and doing stuff in, say, Black Panther or whatever we might see him in next. So I'm not in any hurry to see Chris get replaced or Steve get replaced as Cap. I just want to keep seeing these movies happen because they've been so great. And the Cap films have certainly been my favorites of the Marvel films. But they can't last forever. And we're going to talk about some of that in a little bit when we get to ElseWords. But right now, I can see the compulsion of, should I stay or should I go? Well, there is contract negotiations to take in mind, and that's probably what he's really saying. Yeah.
Our next story is a lot of speculation. And that is that there's the news that apparently Aaron Sorkin is in talks with both Marvel and DC for the film, like for, some property on either side. For those of you guys who don't know who Aaron Sorkin is, first off, shame on you. He has done, for longtime fans, you might remember Casey Drumbeck. from way back in the Glenn Rubenstein days, who is a big Aaron Sorkin fan. Watched, was sports radio,
Sports Night,
um, Studio 60 on the Sunset Strip, the Newsroom, which was what we were talking about at the time in the podcast.
The West Wing.
The West Wing. He's gone on to do write movies like oh gosh, what were they? Social Network, the Steve Jobs movie, where is it? Moneyball, The Great American President, A Few Good Men, Charlie Wilson's War.
Yeah, I mean, you probably, if you follow films, and certainly if you follow the writers of films, you would probably recognize Sorkin.
Yeah, he's famous for the walk and talk style that you see in a lot of the stuff he does.
And that's something that has to come up. Now, I would imagine that certainly because Sorkin is a big name in Hollywood, both for television and for films, but he is making a transition over to movies more. It makes sense that DC and Marvel are talking to him like they'd be talking to any number of directors from different places and different things. Anybody that they can get a hold of that brings a new voice and talent to their universes. I mean, DC Universe, I'm not sure as much, but certainly Marvel is like, how do we keep things fresh? How do we keep things moving along? How do we keep Iron Fist white? Oh, no, I'm kidding. But there's a lot of different things that they're approaching, because like we were saying, Captain America's had 3 different movies. All 3 movies feel different from each other. Now, the third movie feels like an Avengers movie, but that's not necessarily a bad thing, because that's sort of prep for the next 2 Avengers movies that those directors are doing. The question becomes, really, what would Aaron Sorkin do? If you're Marvel, what is the character or project that you would throw his way? What do you think his voice would be good for?
Oh gosh, see, that's an interesting one, because I would see him, and I will point out right now, this all came from on comicbook.com. They talked about, they caught up with him during CinemaCon, and he had said he's being pitched by each, and he's flattered, but he also has never really read a comic book,
which is not necessarily something that should prohibit you. But you should read the source material of the character that you wind up working on. Not all of it.
Yeah, but get ideas. So I mean, I'm going to split this up into essentially to 4 categories: movies and TVs for both DC and Marvel on both sides, with some ideas, because I'm going to agree with B for the TV side for Marvel. Shield, that like something with the Agents of Shield. Getting him in there, writing some of the shows. As a movie, whatever. I mean, I could see him, really revitalizing.
So not Agents of Shield, but something with Nick Fury and Shield Classic.
I could see that. I could see that. I could also see him doing, like if they wanted to do an event like Original Sin, with where that was more of a talking event.
So anything Bendis would make sense, because that's all people do is talk in Bendis comics.
Yeah.
Until the end, which is, it's like, oh, and then we're going to fight, but now we're not going to actually finish this shit. Bendis writes what is 3 seasons of Dragon Ball Z in about 5 years of comics.
Yeah.
Give or take on either one.
Yeah. But so, I mean, like B is saying a movie, not TV. I'm saying, you could do a, a Nick Fury movie with him, but I'm saying you could also, have him come in and write a story arc for the TV show as well, and it would probably boost the ratings a bunch with how his writing goes. I would have to say personally on the movie side, Um, yeah, I think I'm gonna go on a limb here, and I think I could see him doing some good stuff with with a character like Moon Knight. You know, getting getting a little bit more obscure character, and having him being able to do it. Bring out something that hasn't been brought out before, and next thing you know, everyone's like, "Oh, I love this character." From here, like everyone's doing with Groot and Rocket Raccoon right now.
Well, speaking of which, that's what I'd like to see. I'd like to see him do a Groot meets Black Bolt from the Inhumans, because I think that'd be fun. He would have to obviously utilize all his dialogue skills, because it's just I am Groot and silence. And that's it. If Black Bolt had a Sorkin-esque dialogue fest, pretty much the entire Marvel universe would be destroyed. But no, seriously, what I thought of is I would think he would have to come into a new property. I don't think he's going to want to come in and pick up where somebody has already been establishing everything. My thought was something that would be similar to Daredevil, because Daredevil has both the street level fighting stuff, but also the political intrigue, the court stuff. Although we haven't seen a lot of that in Daredevil so far, I think She-Hulk would be a very good fit for Aaron.
You start talking, and I'm like, She-Hulk. He's going to say She-Hulk.
Yeah, because She-Hulk classically has good comedy chops, great stuff with courtroom drama. She's got a sex appeal to her. She is definitely an adult, not like adult mature themes, but I mean adult, like she's someone who's established, who has her own life. I think that it is a character that is rich with things that you could have possibilities to write about, and the extended cast that you could use for her would be terrific. So now, I think that's right in his wheelhouse.
Would you do a She-Hulk movie or She-Hulk TV series?
I would think a 10-episode Netflix series would be where Sorkin would shine, because like the Newsroom, it's just enough to give him the ability to say what he wants to say without going overboard. But a movie is going to, I think, be too limiting.
Yeah. But so what about the DC side of things? I mean, DC, I'm going to go off something Beat said in here as a joke, where he said Suicide Squad 2. I'm going to go, what about like a Legion of Doom movie? So not like, these rapscallion villains, but you get, Lex Luthor and, Black Manta.
Oh, and, fucking a Luthor monologue written by Sorkin would be great. And he's already worked with Eisenberg, so maybe he could actually make Eisenberg's Luthor palatable. I don't believe that, but I can definitely see that would be something that would be interesting.
Here's the thing. Here's the funny thing. When I had said this, I had completely forgotten that Jesse Eisenberg had played this, because I was thinking more like a Kevin Spacey's Lex Luthor,
which I think we would all prefer as Lex Luthor. Again, not a slam on Eisenberg. I definitely like Eisenberg in specific things. I just felt that, not due to his own fault, but his Luthor was tragically miscast and miswritten and misused. But
sadly,
be that as it may, if you want to see his game get upped, Sorkin writing it would be far better than the writing that it had in Batman v Superman.
Yeah, and Beat's pointing out another good one. I mean, I would see this as a TV show. Only one problem is it's from Image Comics, which is not a problem, but just more of he's not in talks with them. And it's Saga. I think it'd be cool. I also think this would be like a little bit more out of his wheelhouse to do Saga.
My DC project that is directly in his wheelhouse, especially if you go off of the Studio 60 series or the Sports Night series,
Doom Patrol.
And it's just screaming for it. No, it would be Blue Beetle and Booster Gold. The Super Buddies. The Super Buddies thing to me would be ideal. That two main guys, and then if you go with the whole Justice League International, have fire involved, have ice involved, kind of grow it organically. A Martian Manhunter in that series, like, I know it would be comedic primarily, but that's what Super Buddies should be. If you get a Guy Gardner in there, all the better. I think that there is such potential for that, and that would be something that Sorkin would really do well. And if he followed the models put forth by Giffen, DeMatteis, and the people who worked on those things before, I think that would just be, that's sort of a dream for those characters to finally get on the screen in the first place, but to then see it happen with someone of this caliber and style of writing, I think would be terrific.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I throw this to our viewers and listeners. What do you think? What would you want in an Aaron Sorkin Marvel or DC TV series? You can let us know by leaving us a voicemail, 805-328-3966, or emailing us, mail@elsenerds.com, or message us on Twitter at ElseNerds, at Galactic Netcasts, at that Gregor. Let us know what do you want to see him do next for a Marvel or DC TV or movie project. But yeah, that's going to do it for the news, and we will be right back. All right, and we are back, and it is time for the ElseViews. This is the segment where we talk about the things that we have seen or read or whatever over the past week. And I'm going to go first because I know we both saw this and continue the dialogue of going back and forth and talking. I'm going to talk about the last crossover for the Flash and Supergirl with the that led into the Kevin Smith episode of Supergirl this past week, which was awesome, and the latest episode of The Flash, which was also really good. But this was called Dynamic Duets, and this was the musical episode. This was the reunions galore throughout here, because you had the Glee reunion with Grant Gustin, Melissa Benoist, and Darren Criss, who came in playing the Music Meister. But then this was also a Star Child Productions reunion, because Darren Criss and Carlos Valdez went to the University of Michigan, go Blue, and were in the theater department and did the Harry Potter musical thing, and some other different productions and stuff like that. And then you had pointed out on Slack there was another reunion thing in here with Grant Gustin and someone on Supergirl, right?
The gentleman who plays Mon-El this season on Supergirl and Grant Gustin went to they were theater majors together in college, and that was just kind of a weird little thing. Although the person who played Mon-El did not actually sing in the episode. He's one of the few people who didn't get to express that. But I don't know, as a theater major, I don't know if that necessarily means that he sang in theater or if he just acted in theater. It may not have been his thing. It seemed like there were a couple people that were there and were specifically left out because they weren't actually singers, but they wanted them involved in the story. And then there were other people who just didn't even make it in the story at all. Like Caitlin wasn't in the dream sequence in any regard, which was a weird thing to see skipped over. People who were actually from the show getting so pushed to the side, I guess because there was no villain for her to fall in love with, but or anybody who will just tragically die. Caitlin has such shit luck with men that she might as well be dating Oliver. But be that as it may,
you're saying all these things, and I'm like, he hasn't seen the latest episode. He hasn't seen the latest episode.
I ain't seen shit. I watched this, and I'll tell you what. Yeah. This was pitched quite a while back. I was surprised at how long it took to get to it, and it was both very delightful in the fact that it's showing off how multi-talented these people are. And it was also a glaring example of the reasons why I stopped watching these shows.
Yeah.
Because it seemed like, from what I picked up, Barry had recently broken up with Iris because he couldn't keep her safe. So he's like, no, I'm just like, I guess he proposed to her and then broke up. And then it's like, and it's all wishy-washy about it. And then some bullshit's going on with Supergirl and Mon-El because she conveniently forgot that Jimmy Olsen was like her one true love at the beginning of this season. And it's like, but we're not able to make it work. And then this whole episode was written just to make them all work out again. And that's one of the things of like, oh, we have to get to this point to tell this one story that we really want to do. So all the rest of this shit will just get cleaned up right here so that we can get to the next factoring point that we need to. And it just seemed, it seemed very Glee. Glee would do that all the time, where it would change people's personalities or motivations per episode. That seems to be standard with anything that Ryan Murphy writes. It's just like, oh, well, last episode, it doesn't matter what we were doing then. What matters is right now. which is okay.
Previously ons.
If you enjoy the show, then it's okay. You get it. And most of the stuff he does it with is comedy. But it is one of those things that I find very tiring. And just in general, the melodrama stuff is fine, but it's all very pat how it comes back together. And on top of that, there wasn't a lot of depth. And the whole Music Meister thing, he wasn't a Music Meister at all. He sang a song, but he mostly put them into a fucking movie.
True. So I came at this from a different thing because I'm still watching all the shows, which is, like I said, realized when you said when you went on the Caitlin Snow tirade, and I'm like, well, she died this past episode. Wait, what? Who said that?
Oh.
Yeah, she died on this last episode. So the following episode, she dies, and they remove the necklace, and now she is full on Killer Frost. Which I might have a little bit of problems with that, of seeing how it plays out the next episode or so. But yeah, it did have that, so I'll explain a little bit of the backstory stuff. So you saw the beginning of the Flash where they were, he's trying to prevent Savitar from killing Iris by going about the, basically doing a reverse Flashpoint of, instead of going back and changing something, changing stuff that he saw from that will happen in the future. And so they did like a Kid Flash caught this guy and all, and one of the things that he did was he proposed to Iris because she didn't have a ring on her finger when Savitar killed her. So that was part of it. So she broke up she called off the engagement with him. And then he also sort of understood because, she was upset because she well, do you love me, or is it because you want to protect me? And then Barry's like, well, it's a little bit of both, because I love you, so I want to protect you. And so I figured, hey, put a ring on it, and it might change up the future enough, stuff like that. Then getting here, the Jimmy Olsen thing with Supergirl, I think what ended really quick in season 2. They haven't hit on that.
No, it was almost immediately. It's like first episode of season, like the whole first season was she's pining away for Jimmy, and then they get to the kiss at the end of the finale, and then the next episode, the first episode of this season starts up, and she's like, I don't know how I feel about this Jimmy Olsen guy. And it's like, none of us know how we feel about the fucking Jimmy Olsen guy.
Yeah.
But now he's going to go off and be a superhero over here with Wynn and some other fucking person. And you just go pick up any alien tramp you meet on the side of the fucking planet. I don't care.
Hey, I'll let you know he's a prince, sir.
Yeah, I literally do not care. Mon-El is one of my favorite characters from the comics. And I just know, like Mr. Terrific, they're just going to do everything they can to fuck that up with these shows. And
you would say hashtag not your Monel?
No, I would say nothing. I got to the point at the winter finales where it's like, hey, we're on a break. I'm like, no. You're all broke. I'm done. And it's sort of liberating, like anything else. Like giving up a show when it just frustrates you more than you enjoy it feels really good. But I was curious to see the musical episode because I love musical episodes. I loved it on Buffy. I loved it on Scrubs.
Yeah.
And they're all various degrees of how good they are. Certainly the singing talent of this was very good. The songs range from like staples of like, here's songs that you've heard before, to a couple originals. One of them was co-written by Rachel Bloom from My Crazy Ex-Girlfriend. That was a Super Friends song.
Yeah.
And I thought everybody was like, wow, this is really cheesy. I'm like, yeah, but it looks like it was supposed to be cheesy. And it's fun and it's funny. And it's the two of them, although it seemed really Barry heavy. Like a lot of the stuff was about his life and I'll be your super friend and I'll be there in a flash. And I get all the good jokes. But the final song at the end, which was the, teenage girls are going to download this shit on iTunes tonight. It was fine. It was all perfectly fine. It wasn't terrific music, although it was terrific performances. And as far as the episode, it was pretty meh. I just like it. A lot of it was just, here's all these people who play these characters, and we're not going to do anything with them as their characters. We're throwing this whole singing thing into an alternate reality that has no bearing, really, except at the end, we get the princess getting kissed by the prince, and vice versa, the prince getting kissed by the princess, to wake them up like they're fucking Snow White and shit. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
It went seriously hokey.
Yeah, and I mean, I look, because I think I look at this with where I could see this going in the future, like if they do like how they do the crossovers, the big crossover events once a year, or however they're going to do them. I sort of see this going, because Music Meister's still out there. That's the one thing that they didn't do that they did in the beginning of the Flash. Is like, oh, let's kill all the fucking villains. So he's out there somewhere. So I could see. But
he's also not a villain.
Yeah. I mean,
he seemed more like an imp from the fifth dimension. He seemed more like Mixaplick.
Yeah. So I could see him, coming back, and for like this, for whatever reason, and stuff in the future. But this did remind me, strangely enough, of Glee before Melissa Benoist was even on it, because I did not know her from Glee, because she came on post the Britney episode. So
yeah, I didn't know any of these people from Glee.
Yeah, like Grant Gustin and Darren Criss had just came on when they were on for like a season or half a season or something like that when I left, and all that. But no, I did enjoy the show. I mean, it reminded me of what I loved with the last crossover that they did with just the Flash and Supergirl, which it's the lightness that Barry can have, because this whole season he's been very dark.
Yeah, no
and
shit.
It's like, and this one it's like, hey, remember, he could be light, and it's sort of doing that same thing with him. It's like, hey, I can be more optimistic, not my name's Oliver Queen and I kill people.
Right. And that's part of what killed these shows for me, was that, I mean, Arrow was already a slog, and I had left Arrow in the middle of the third season and then came back to it because of all these fucking promises of the fourth season. And it's like, no, we're really just, we're still dicks. We don't give a shit what you think. And fine, I'm nobody. I'm a guy with a fucking podcast, but Flash was fun. Flash was a fun show. It may have been dumb at times, and it may be that they can't seem to get past having a fucking mysterious speedster villain every fucking season, but it was a fun show. And this season was just so fucking rotten from the very beginning. Like the relationship between him and Cisco breaking down, and just the constant beratement of like, oh, not good enough, and like, but here's fucking Wally, we'll make Wally into a Flash somehow, and fucking the third time Wells, it's like, no, we've had enough Wells. I love Tom Cavanaugh, I love him on the show, but I didn't need HR Wells. I was happy enough with the guy from Earth fucking 2. And if we were gonna explore another hero speedster, then I would have rather had Jesse than the fucking Wally thing happening, just because like Wally wanted it bad enough for some shit. But all the light and happiness stuff seemed to go from Flash over to Supergirl. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing, is I don't think it's possible to have Flash be around Supergirl and to not cheer the fuck up, because Melissa Benoist, she fucking exudes that. She has that kind of innocence to her. She has that constant hope to her, the kind of shit that you want associated with a Superman or a Supergirl character. She has that. But Flash should have that too. In the comics, when the fucking multicolored lanterns took over everything, Flash was a blue lantern. Flash symbolized hope. Supergirl, for some reason, was a red lantern, but that was a different fucking Supergirl at that point in time. Flash seems like somebody who should be a less dry, dark character, and I'm not a fan of how they've done this season, and so that's part of why I walked away.
No, yeah, and that's understandable. And again,
and there are things that I'm like so excited. I'm like super excited to see Cisco vibing and shit. I don't quite get what they're doing with Vibe, but I'm like, fucking cool. You know, just do shit with him, because I love the actor, and I love seeing Vibe get some fucking due finally, because I remember Justice League Detroit and all those characters suck balls, but Vibe gets like this resurgence and shit. It's great.
And also it's cool because, you know, this is Carlos Valdez's first, like, really only thing he's done in Hollywood. Like, that's big. You know, like you look at his IMDb page and it's The Flash, Arrow, you know, Legends of Tomorrow, Supergirl. You know, that's it.
But I feel like they're almost Felicitying him, which is Felicity came into Arrow, and first of all, the first strike against her was she wasn't Black Canary. And so there's the faction of people who are like, well, Oliver can't be with Felicity because she's not his true love, even though Laurel Lance doesn't exist in the fucking comics, you assholes. Neither does Sarah Lance. Black Canary is a completely different character. And look how well they fucked that up, because they're going on their 5th try at that character coming up.
Yeah.
But so they took Felicity, who was a great character, who was beloved, who was fun, who was like the ounce of light that you got once a week in the midst of the shit show of everything Oliver and everybody else. And they broke the shit out of her. They made her miserable 90% of the time. They made her harp on Oliver at times when he didn't need harping on, and then put up with his shit the times that he absolutely needed someone to fucking put him in his place. No, that's why he got Diggle. So they ruined what was one of the best parts of the show, and I feel like they're trying to do a lot of the same things with Cisco this season, and it's fucking dumb. It is, why ruin something that is so good and that so many people are into, other than the fact that I think they just don't know what to do with some of these characters. So yeah, whatever. I'm glad I watched the Duet, because it was a bright, shining moment in a sea of I can no longer give a fuck.
Yeah. And I mean, you know, where I am sad to hear that, at the same time, I mean, you know, this is why I love doing the show, because there will be the differences of, you know, how, you know, with how you have and how I have things. You know, I wouldn't even say it's like optimist and pessimist. It's, you know, you're more pragmatic and I'm the opposite of pragmatic, sort of deal.
We have different desires of what these shows should bring us. And I am constantly wrong. I am easily wrong enough of the time that people should probably just take my opinion and flush it, because the show's doing very well. All these shows are doing very well. They're doing incredibly well for the CW. They're doing very well in general. I have nothing to say that is like, if you enjoy Flash, you're fucking stupid. No, not at all. I want to enjoy Flash. I did enjoy Flash. I just hit my limit of where I could no longer enjoy it. Now, part of it is 4 shows is also a lot more to keep up in. And when they start doing crossovers and stuff, and you want those moments to happen, it means you're paying attention to stuff that you maybe wouldn't pay attention to if it wasn't attached to these other things.
Yeah.
Would I watch Arrow if not for the relationship to the other 3 shows? No. Would I watch Legends of Tomorrow? Probably would have stopped in the 2nd season pretty early on, because it's been a mess. There's things that I like, but it's a lot of hard to follow story for characters that I somewhat enjoy.
Yeah, I'm gonna say this. We are so off of what we were originally talking about, but
yeah,
I'm liking Legends of Tomorrow for the Doctor Who parallels that they're doing. Like
Which is hilarious to me, because look how much I love Doctor Who these days.
Yeah, but I mean, it's like you look at the episode where they were, where Jax and Canary were in, and White Canary were in Rip Hunter's mind, and I'm like, this is the Doctor's wife. We're getting to the episode where it quickly becomes the Doctor's wife, where it's I think it was the first one that Neil Gaiman wrote, where it was the TARDIS personified as a living being, talking to him, and stuff like that.
Beatmaster saying they overdo the homages, and that's exactly what I think. Is that it's one thing to do a play on a story of something else, but it's another thing, because we always have known that the Rip Hunter character, as displayed in the show, and using Arthur Darvill to play him, is a serious play off of Doctor Who as it is. So then to take one of the very popular, well-received episodes of Doctor Who and try to do your version of it, first of all, you ain't no Neil fucking Gaiman. You never will be. Second of all, try something else. Try something to make it that you're not just the ripoff that is also ripping off in the midst of your ripoff.
Now, I want to point out here, because we're missing something here, because Beats also saying it's close to a serial ripping off. He forgot the quotes around Rip.
Okay.
He's Rip Hunter.
I was just going to do, yo, dog, I heard you like rip-off, so I put some rip-off in your rip-off so you can rip off.
I'm sorry. I was really hunting for that pun there.
Yeah, no, that was good. That was solid. That was definitely better than the writing on most of these shows. But again, my fucking opinion.
No,
I am usually mistaken.
I mean, hey, much like assholes, everyone's got an opinion. So, tell us about this book that you've read.
Yeah, so instead of watching TV and bitching about it, I read a book.
Yay!
And as I just said, my opinion means shit. I'm gonna recommend this book, and you have to decide now which Corey you listen to. So I recently switched podcast apps that I use, and one of the high points of going off of Stitcher was that there's certain podcasts that just weren't available through Stitcher. That I was able to get through this other one. Now I'm finding that there are some other ones that I'm having a hard time getting through this new one, and it's pissing me off. Yeah. Fucking iTunes should not be the go-to for podcasts. It's bullshit. But one of the podcasts that I was able to get back into my rotation is this one called Writing Excuses, and it's 4 authors, and often they interview other authors, and it's 15 minutes of them giving writing advice. And it's really good. And I listened to it years ago, and then when I went to Stitcher, for some reason, the feed stopped, and I never updated again. And that's my
you
writing
might have got
excuse.
a $5 credit for that, by the way.
Well, I have no idea. But that's my writing excuse, is I couldn't listen to writing excuses. So anyway, I finally got to listen to it again, and the first episode of me being back in it, they interview an author named Linda Addison, and she is a poet. And listening to it, and they're talking about the beauty of language and stuff, and how to make poems happen. I find out that she's a horror-themed, horror poet, as opposed to like, you know, your average. I think that I shall never see.
Roses are red, violets are blue.
The tree that those fucking dogs are barking at outside, and I'm like, oh, that perked me up a little bit. So they mentioned she's got a new book out, which is a mix of poems and short stories. Now, I don't read a ton of poetry. I wrote a lot of song lyrics when I was a teenager. That's about as close as I got to doing poetry myself, because I wanted to be a musician for a long time. But I was interested because the book alternates. It starts with a poem, does a short story, another poem, another short story, and goes that way throughout the whole thing. And I thought, okay, well, that sounds intriguing. So I picked it up. The book is called How to Recognize a Demon Has Become Your Friend. And it's $4.99 through Kindle. We'll have a link in our show notes. If you want to pick it up, it'll help out the network a little bit if you use our affiliate link. And it's pretty damn good. And I read it in a week, like I do when I finally get a hard on to read. Is I like to throw myself into this. I just restarted The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and I was a little bummed to break away from that, because it's exciting to read that book again after so many years, and probably my fourth time going through them. But I wanted to give this a shot. Now, one of the things that I noticed halfway through the book stops having a sort of supernatural / horror theme, and it starts to get into sci-fi. I didn't know this. She also does some sci-fi writing, and the sci-fi stuff didn't appeal to me as much, except for one story. But most of the stuff, the poems are short. They're about a page to a page and a half each. So while there's several of them throughout the book, it's you get a sort of breather in between each of the short stories. And if you're not into poetry, they've got a good meter. They're pretty simple. You're sort of in and out, and it might help you build an appreciation for how poems are written, how a certain style of poetry is written, because there's very many different styles of poems. And it's light in the way of poetry. So if the poetry isn't your thing, don't let that scare you off, because there are some good ones in this, and there's also some really good short stories. One of the short stories I was just about to mention was the one sci-fi one that really did appeal to me. It's called Artificial Unintelligence, and it's about a woman that is arguing with the artificial intelligence that is put in place at her company that is in charge of human resources. And the human resources artificial intelligence has determined that because her last name is spelled differently than how their records have it, meaning they've added an E and she doesn't have an E in her name, that she must be an imposter that is stealing this person's identity. And so it's just an argument back and forth between her and this AI through emails, and she has to go and get on her neighbor's email because it auto blocks her at some point, and it sends police to her house because they assume that she must have kidnapped the real person. And it's just such a great thing to me, because I work in IT, I work very closely with HR. I see how things like the ADP systems are in place and stuff. And it's funny because we've recognized this here, how Google has no human contact for when you have a problem. So it's just go through the automated shit over and over again and hope something happens, that it gets back to you and fixes things. That's where we're going. And this story really reflected that well for me. So I cracked up through this one.
Yeah.
The other stories, and I'm not going to go through all of them, but there were two short stories that actually go together. One of them is called Power. It's pretty early in the book, and the other one is called Miles to Go, and it's Miles with a Z. I'm not exactly sure on that, but the first story is very classic gothic horror feel. It's about a couple young girls, Angelique and Brenda, who are staying with their grandmother. Angelique discovers while staying with the family that she has magical abilities that Brenda and her grandmother already know more about. So it's kind of teaching her on that. It's a ghost story with some possession stuff and an exorcism, and it's pretty classic in that regard. And it's good. It's a good, solid story. And I was like, wow, these are interesting characters. I would like to see more of this. By the time I got to about the last third of the book, we get to this other story called Miles to Go, which is about these characters, but now they're adults. And in the shift from the first story to the later story, it goes from being classic horror to horror with a science fiction twist. There is an integration of magic with science that is being explored in this. There are things like an artificial intelligence that is in a music instrument that Angelique uses in her daily life as a musician, but Brenda can fine-tune the machine. So they have a relationship that's still kind of built on interaction with each other and interaction with magic, but it's magic mixed with science. And that one becomes more of a kind of a kidnapping type of story, but it still deals with magic for the most part. But there are things like a laser knife and other things that are just sort of mixed in that changes the feel of the world, but you're already kind of pre-involved from knowing these characters from the first short story. And that was very interesting to me because a series that I've been trying to work on and I'm hoping to get back into is a series of stories about a young character, but I want to go through different points in his life. And like I want to kind of go back and forth because a lot of the stories deal with memory and the activity of memory and how we remember things and stuff. And I find it interesting that this jumps in such a huge way to this other point with these characters. But I'd like to read more of these characters. I'd like to see more of their lives growing up together or their lives individually and dealing with the magic stuff. And again, the magic was more intriguing to me. The supernatural stuff was more intriguing to me. But I wasn't necessarily put off by the science fiction elements as they were introduced in this other story. It's just reading more of these characters in the middle portions of their lives deal with the transition of the world from the simple sort of semi-gothic New Orleans version to what is the later version where there are artificial intelligent things involved in it. Overall, the book is pretty good. I think maybe 60 to 70% of the stories I really enjoyed. That includes the poems. And the other 30%, especially the more science fiction stuff, wasn't quite what I was into. But I definitely found that the book is worth it to me. She's a great writer. She is a 4 times Bram Stoker Award winner for her different collections. She's certainly well known. It was just my first time ever hearing of her, and I just decided to give the book a shot. And so it's called How to Recognize a Demon Has Become Your Friend. The first poem and the last poem in the books actually use that title for them. So it's kind of like the poems at the beginning, and then she does maybe an extension of it or a rewriting of it at the end. So they're different, but they do kind of tie together. And it's by Linda Addison, and it's a solid recommendation, I think.
Nice. Well, that is going to do it for the ElseViews. We will be right back. And we are back, and it is time for the ElseWords. This is our big main topic for the show, and we are keeping it in the Marvel universe here, and we are going to be talking about the Sony happenings with their the Spider-Man property, because they are working on expanding the Spider-Man universe with their deal. The first bit is that there is
let's back up for a second. So what they're working on, at least initially, is not expanding the Spider-Man universe, but creating a Sony Marvel universe that while relates to a bunch of Spider-Man secondary and tertiary characters, is not, initially at least, involved with Spider-Man, and that's where it gets weird.
Yes. This is, like Corey said, is the weird part. The first bit is that there is a working on a Silver Sable Black Cat movie, which is being written by Chris Yost, who worked on Thor Ragnarok and did some comics for Marvel. I can't remember what ones he did though.
Well, Chris Yost usually teamed up with Craig Kyle, started out, I think his Marvel relationship started out doing stuff for the cartoons. And on the Wolverine and the X-Men cartoon, Chris and Craig created the X-23 Laura character.
For his work on X-Men Evolution.
Yes, that's right, is X-Men Revolution. So he created the character that is now a big part of the Logan movie, and is actually Wolverine in the comics, and I think wrote the introduction or co-wrote the introduction of the character into the mainstream Marvel universe after Joe Quesada had done some writing of her in NYX, which was New York X-Men, which is a weird series. But they got to bring her in, and they started writing more X-Men comics at the same time as doing stuff like the Avengers cartoon series and a couple other things. So Chris and Craig have quite a bit of pedigree with the character, with Marvel Universe and stuff, but mostly in X-Men. He did write Volume 2 of the Scarlet Spider, but that's really, I think, as far as comics connections, that's where it stops.
Yeah, that's because I'm looking at his Wikipedia at his thing. There was that he did Fear Itself, Spider-Man number 1 through 3. AVX number 3. He was a writer of the Black Widow versus Magic story. He wrote A+X number 7, which he was a writer of the Thor Iceman story. But yeah, so I because I had remembered seeing his name in the comics, couldn't remember what it was for exactly. But this is going to be a good fit for him working with this. He's building on a script that was written by Lisa Joy, the co-creator of HBO's Westworld. But yeah, so this is the first part that's really interesting. And the whole relationship seems weird because where it seems like Spider-Man gets to cross, go into the Marvel Cinematic Universe, all these other characters, and from one of the articles that we have here, there are 900 Marvel characters that they have to pull from here. Only one of them gets to go, well, 2, well, 3 if you count, Aunt May and Uncle Ben.
More. I mean, from what we've seen from the trailer of Spider-Man this week, we'll talk a little bit about some of the characters. Oh man,
I'm going Jeff Kanata on this one, dude.
Well, yeah, you're gonna have to plug your ears when I talk about it. Anyways, so one thing, not yet. Shh. Put your headphones on, dumbass. So one thing that we should say is, so the Silver Sable character, which a lot of people probably aren't familiar with because I haven't seen her have a series in a long time, but she's a character that was created by Tom DeFalco and Ron Frenz in 1985. She's a mercenary who runs a company that hunts war criminals. There was a series for a while of Silver Sable, and I think that there were a few Spider-Man villains that were reformed that were a part of her team. And then Black Cat, people might be more familiar with, is Felicia Hardy. She's basically a cat burglar who had a relationship with Peter Parker for a long time. And it's kind of like Marvel's version of Catwoman in a lot of the ways of like her interactions with Spider-Man, and she's like romantically charged of seeing him and didn't know his secret identity for most of the time that was going on. And she is the criminal in the night who steals stuff like Catwoman. But she's certainly grown as a character over the years. And it is honestly one of my favorite Spider-Man characters. So the mixing of these two characters, I've not ever seen them doing too much together in the comics, and certainly not outside of the context of having Peter Parker as a through point. But this, as of right now, this movie has no ties to Spider-Man, but may have ties to the next movie that they're talking about developing.
Yeah, it's weird because it says the spin-offs are not off. This is from the Hollywood Reporter article. The spin-offs are not offshoots from the upcoming Spider-Man Homecoming, but rather projects spun from the overall franchise and based on Sony's Marvel's Spider-Man universe. So it sounds really weird when you look at it. But I mean, I'm honestly with these and the other story that Venom's going to be an R-rated movie, and in its own, it's going to be like, I think it's like going to be its own thing as well. I mean, as long as they're doing good stories, I don't care.
Yeah, and first, something to say is how brave they are for trying to get a superhero film out that has not only a female lead but two female leads as a part of it. Now, we don't know if it's just Silver Sable and Black Cat. It's something that almost seems primed to be like a Suicide Squad if we've got multiple characters. Certainly Silver Sable has her team, or if Black Cat is supposed to be either on the team or someone that they're fighting against. I don't know. It's hard to say. But in a world where we're just about to get a Wonder Woman film, and we are going to eventually get a Captain Marvel film, the Carol Danvers version of the character, but we still haven't gotten an announcement on a Black Widow film, which Silver Sable seems to hold a lot of the same traits that you would expect from a Black Widow movie.
Yeah.
It's funny that it's been such a struggle to have these films come out with female lead characters for so long, and Sony is at least saying, "Oh yeah, we can do that."
No, yeah, definitely. So let's go to the other side here with this, and that's the with the Venom story. So right now I don't think a lot is known about it. But they're saying it's going to be rated R, which makes sense. And so they're going to be going with the Eddie Brock thing here, or with Eddie Brock's Venom, obviously. But I'm here's the thing: I'm not the biggest fan of the Eddie Brock Venom. I like the Flash Thompson version. I like
the Flash Thompson version is more heroic. It's a redemption story. But if you don't have a Flash Thompson needing to be redeemed, then it doesn't work. And people are, it's as much as we are beholden to continuity, people are going to complain that, but Venom started out with Eddie Brock. Venom started out as a bad guy and then eventually goes to these other things. But if Flash Thompson is being used in the Peter Parker Spider-Man films, and there's not a crossover between these films planned at this point, then it doesn't make sense to try to use Flash Thompson again in this. But the whole reason for being of Venom and for the animosity that Eddie Brock has, it's all tied to Peter Parker.
Yeah, and this is you're hitting on a big point here. You're hitting on something that scares me with this, because with both of these stories, they are not directly tied into the stuff. Now, they could be in the future, but it's a little worrying if they've already got cast, for the Venom movie, for instance, if they already have Eddie Brock cast in Spider-Man, in Spider-Man Homecoming, then how are they going to tackle this one? Is this one going to be based more on the older stuff? How is it?
I'm pretty sure that Eddie Brock's not in Spider-Man: Homecoming, and because this is all coming from Sony as a studio, and Sony is of course involved in the Spider-Man film too. I'm sure that they were careful about what things they were going to leave available to themselves that weren't going to go into Homecoming, and I'm sure there was also a giant fucking contract of what was going to be allowed in the Spider-Man movie and what Marvel was going to have access to, and the back and forth of that. And they're like, yeah, we'll let you use these things and you'll let us use those things, but you're not getting all of it and we're not getting all of it. So we don't want Venom fighting Captain America before we've had a chance to play with Venom at the very least. We don't want, I don't know why, Silver Sable or Black Cat in the Marvel co-produced movies. Maybe they just feel like there's too many people running around the street and all their periods are going to sync up. All I know is that it's still very strange because these characters have all come from their association with Peter Parker and Spider-Man. I mean, they're calling it the Marvel Spider-Man universe at Sony without an inclusion of Spider-Man, which would... So one of the things is that the article kind of goes on is that there may be a falling out of the MCU and Spider-Man after the Homecoming sequel. After the Spider-Man Homecoming sequel, the contract is that the back and forth of using this version of Spider-Man started out in Civil War, is going to be in Spider-Man Homecoming. He's going to appear in the Avengers Infinity movies, or at least one of them, but probably both. And then there's going to be a sequel to Homecoming. And that probably after that, there will no longer be a Marvel conjunction film for the Spider-Man stuff. So does that mean then that the Tom Holland Spider-Man character gets to be involved in the following Sony Spider-Man universe stuff? Does his Spider-Man suddenly show up and get to have a crossover with Venom and get to have a crossover with Black Cat and Silver Sable? See, with Silver Sable and Black Cat, those characters exist outside of him before they meet him.
Yeah.
So it makes sense. With Venom, it doesn't. Venom is just a dark, horrific version of Spider-Man if done like the comics, and it would be weird to explain how this Venom exists without ties to Peter Parker, and then have him meet up with Peter Parker and go like, hey, you seem really familiar to me in a way, and I don't know exactly why.
I honestly feel I'm really torn on this, because on the one hand, I want the Marvel stuff, or Marvel, to have all their toys back. I want to see them have the rights to the Spider-Man universe. I want them to have the rights to the Fantastic Four, to all, everything here, so that they can make great stories, great complete stories and stuff like that. But this doesn't make sense, because for one thing, I would be a little worried that we would now have a fourth recasting of Spider-Man. Like we go from Tobey Maguire to Andrew Garfield to Tom Holland to some other, younger kid, and to bring...
No, I think they're planning. I think the plan is, once they are contractually finished with Marvel, that they'll bring Tom Holland into the fold with the other stuff. It will remain this Spider-Man. If this Spider-Man works, it will remain him in these other movies.
But see, here's the thing you just said there, and it makes me wonder, if it works, why would Sony want to go away from Marvel?
Because at this point in time, they have to split things with Marvel, and that's never a long-term goal. Unless this thing makes $2 billion,
yeah,
and they each get $1 billion, overall they're going to be like, yeah, but we could be making all that bank. And on top of that, it's hugely complicated to work with two studios. That's why Hulk keeps not happening.
No, yeah. And see, my argument with that would be, look at their history. Look at the stuff that they had done in, beforehand, where you got the first Sam Raimi Spider-Man, did this amount of money. I'm rough guessing here. And then Spider-Man 2, and then Spider-Man 3, and then Amazing Spider-Man, and then Amazing Spider-Man 2, and then Spider-Man appearing in Captain America Civil War did gangbusters. And so it's like, where I get, it's the whole, you got to split between people, but at the same time, it's sort of like, it doesn't make sense to me, because if you hadn't been doing good, if you hadn't been making good things by yourself, and then you get people, or you get help with it, why do you then go, oh, no, we got it from here, and then go back to making the shit that you were making before?
Well, keep in mind, the Sam Raimi Spider-Man made $820 million years before anybody else was doing superhero films other than Fox with Blade and X-Men. Spider-Man 2 did $783 million. These were not unsuccessful films. They were doing just fine with them until they went with a different direction after Spider-Man 3, which made, god damn it, $890 million, more than the first two. So it's and the Amazing Spider-Man films made $1.7 billion between the two of them.
Yeah.
So they weren't not succeeding. They were just critically not hitting the levels that they wanted them to. There was a lot of complications, and they wanted to reinvent. And they saw what Marvel was doing, and they said, especially when Sony was going through some pretty heinous shit behind the scenes, that's where a lot of this came from, is the person who was in charge of Spider-Man at Sony stepping down. And she's like, well, then I'm going to open up a relationship with Marvel and see if we can't make this work somehow. It was a lot of things that led to this getting to where we are with Marvel and Sony working together. And excellent. It turned out great for Marvel having Spider-Man in Civil War. It looks like from the previews, and this is not going to be something that'll set you off, having Tony Stark involved in Spider-Man Homecoming is adding some great interaction and flavor, and is going to entice people to see this movie, because in their minds, it's just going to be another Marvel movie. Most people aren't going to care of who the studio is. They just care that, oh, fucking A, Spider-Man and Iron Man in the same goddamn film together. That's great, because I love the Iron Man movies, and I love the Avengers movies, and I love Spider-Man in that last Avengers movie, even though it was Captain America. So I, of course, am going to go see this, just like I'm going to go see Guardians of the Galaxy 2 when it comes out, because I'm sold.
Okay, but then we go with them. We continue with them. And, you get, Spider-Man Homecoming 2, or, Spider-Man The Winter's Ball, or whatever they want to call, the sequel to the movie. And, it features, Ant-Man, or, another Marvel, cinematic universe hero coming in there.
Cap.
And then, Cap.
Resign Chris Evans and get Cap involved in this.
Yeah, and then done. That's the end of the contractually obligated playing together with their toys, and they go
not
over here.
Discounting the fact that this Spider-Man is already going to be in the Avengers movies.
But
that's four more films, or that's 4 films still to go that none of it have been released. But isn't Spider-Man
the Spider-Man sequel after the 4th Avengers?
We don't know.
Because I'm going by if it's after the after Infinity War, after the other Avengers movie, then we get this Homecoming sequel, and then it's all Sony.
Well, we're probably already in Marvel phase 5 to 6 at that point.
Yeah.
And here's the thing is you're thinking, well, then they're going to shoot themselves on the foot by no longer involving Marvel.
Well, no, I'm going. What I was going with that was, you get to that point where you get to the point where it goes back to Sony, and people are going and they're expecting, okay, what's Spider-Man going to get himself into? Who is he going to interact with? And we don't see anyone who's in this universe that we should be expecting to see. And wouldn't that then turn people off to it?
Well, it might, unless they're having success with the other Spidey heroes and villains in the Sony universe that they've been establishing on the side, like Silver Sable, Black Cat, Venom, and so on. And at some point, you want the heroes to be able to stand on their own too. Like the first Iron Man was just Iron Man. The second Iron Man involved Black Widow. The third Iron Man, other than War Machine, who was an Iron Man character, the third Iron Man went back to just being about Iron Man. I would argue that worked better for me in a lot of ways than Civil War did, because Civil War was a movie that was not hugely about Cap. I mean, he was at the center of it, but it was, a lot of people have said, it was an Avengers movie called Captain America. And it made sense in the way that they were progressing with the characters. It made sense that was a story that needed to come next. Did it necessarily make sense that it was a Captain America movie then? I'm not sure. Other than the fact that Civil War in the comics really dealt with Cap and Iron Man, and it could have been Avengers Civil War, and it would have made as much or more sense.
Yeah.
But Thor Ragnarok is going to, we know, involve the Hulk, but introduce a lot of other characters, and it's seemingly going to focus more on Thor than all the other Avengers. I think that realistically is what we need to see, is can Spider-Man, after 5 appearances, survive on his own in his own films? I would expect that he could, if he's proven popular in those other movies. I think, again, most people won't think twice about it. They won't say, oh, but now he's not in the Avengers anymore and none of the Avengers can show up. They'll just go, hey, I've been digging the shit out of these Spider-Man movies. I can't wait to see number 3. Or fucking A, he's going to finally fight Venom and it's not going to be Topher Grace looking like a little bitch. I can't wait to watch that. Hopefully. And again, not disliking Topher Grace. I like Topher Grace fine, and Topher Grace shit. Topher Grace is no fucking Venom. And Spider-Man don't do no dance scenes. I just think that, it would be wonderful if either these things go straight over to Marvel, and Marvel just gets to control their own fucking universe, because they have done little wrong. They have definitely had some things that have been less successful, and certainly things that I don't enjoy as much if you go across the board of the television stuff and everything too. But overall, their films have been hugely successful, and it seems like they've figured out how to make these things work. And it seems like their input to Spider-Man makes it look, at least, like this version is going to do very well. Because it's hitting the right notes. It feels like Spider-Man. It's not all happening at night. He's out in the fucking daytime. The introduction of Michael Keaton as the Vulture. And there are some other surprises that I won't mention to you here because you're Kanadaing it.
So far you have like that's where I would end, because that's all that I know. Is all that stuff, and then Spider-Man,
trying to be fair to you.
Yeah, and then Spider-Man wears a jacket over, like I saw the poster or the picture with him wearing the windbreaker or whatever it is over his uniform, or over
and
his
lying in front of Avengers Tower. But that's I'm not going to try to wreck shit for you. We say at the beginning of the show we'll spoil stuff, but we're not here to harsh anybody's time. So it's voluntary if you continue to listen to the point where we start spoiling things that you might not be ready to be spoiled yet. Gregor's fucking stuck here. He's got to listen to me. He's captive audience.
And here's the thing, and this is where it is the bad part, and this is why, in my opinion, the big reason why the blog that I did for Galactic Netcasts with the poll list didn't last as long as it did. Part of it was, I had work, but it was also the daily, trying to find a news story. And it's like, here's this picture from Suicide Squad. I burned myself out on that stuff. So now my philosophy on anything movie related is, until the first, like I will watch trailers until it's like, okay, I'm done. I don't need to see any more. With Spider-Man, I'm a lifelong Spider-Man fan. He was my first superhero that I watched. He was gentle. He was kind. Sorry, getting off track here.
You're talking about a kid, by the way. You're talking about a child.
Yeah. Well, I was a child too. But actually no, because it was the cartoon from the 90s, and
I'm just teasing, man. Don't examine the joke.
No, yeah. But he's but no, so it's like I don't need to see any of it. Okay, pictures are cool. Yeah. Oh, hey, look at the costume. That's pretty sweet. As I'm going through my article, but I'm probably not going to watch any trailers until after I go see Spider-Man Homecoming.
I will say the biggest complaint about the trailer seems to be that it gives away too much of the story.
Yeah.
So you are definitely doing yourself a favor by not watching it if you want to be surprised. Yes. That said, I don't think it's giving away so much of the story that I'm gonna like not get to enjoy the fucking movie. And there's still plenty of things that aren't touched on in the trailer. There's a lot of characters that don't get any focus at all. So, and it looks great. It looks absolutely great. But going off of that, yeah, it sucks to think that we'll have Spider-Man and Marvel crossover for a few features, and then that relationship will likely end. But if they give me some good fucking Spider-Man movies, I'll probably be okay. And we'll have an opportunity for 5 movies to have Spider-Man and the Marvel Universe crossover. But does it get to a point where maybe people are tired of Tony Stark being the go-to talky money supplier guy that shows up for things? Can Spider-Man just go be Spider-Man? Because he wasn't involved under Tony in the origins of the character. There was many years where Spider-Man was shunned by the rest of the superhero community and wasn't an Avenger and didn't kick it with the X-Men. And when he hung out with the Fantastic Four, he had a bag over his head. So it's realistically, Spider-Man started out as an individual that now we are spoiled by the teams and spoiled by the amount of years that he's been in the Avengers and other things. But going back to basics could be a good thing for him.
Yeah. But no, yes, I think that's honestly where I'm going to end it, because there's nothing else I can add with that. But yeah, so you guys, like I said before with the questions, what do you want to see out of a Venom, Silver Sable, Black Cat movies? Send us mail at ElseNerds.com. You can leave us a voicemail at
805-328-3966.
There it is. And you can find all of our subscription links at gncast.com/subscribe. You can follow us on Facebook, facebook.com/galacticnetcasts. That's also, at Galactic Netcasts is the Twitter, at ElseNerds is the show. Go to, follow the producers on Twitter, Beatmasters at Beatmaster80, Evans at Mr_Fusion. You can find me on Twitter and many social media websites at that Gregor, or on Instagram at that.Gregor. And Corey, where can people find you?
Well, I dropped social media like it was a CW superhero show. So what you can do is every once in a while, I'm trying. I post comics at donutscomics.com, the works of Levi Krauss and friends. Some of them were written by me. A lot of them were not, and that's okay. They're probably the better for it. And just in general, I like his stuff. So that's why I post it every day or every week.
And the final thing to be said is this has been a Don't Tell Glenn production. We will see you guys next week.
Or else.
Tell Glenn.